for this afternoon, but only two will go ahead in this session. So we will, we've got Conor Pyle and Jiang Renfeng. The first presentation will be presented by Conor Pyle. We then have Teru Konishi, and our final session, just to let you know, so that you can switch rooms if you would like, is Urjani Chakravarti. Unfortunately, due to some travel plans, she is not able to be with us, but has very kindly recorded her presentation, and that will be made available online afterwards. So please feel free to engage with it there. So having said that, I'll hand over to Conor, who's going to present on pragmatic analysis of Chinese COVID vaccination certificates. Over to you, Conor.
Okay, thank you, Caroline, and hello to everybody. I'm Conor from Trinity College Dublin, the Centre for Language and Communication Studies. Jiang Renfeng, my former colleague there, now working in Shandong University, who worked co-author and also did the field work. So let's get started. If I can. Okay, so the research began with a study of the semiotics of these codes during the pandemic. So the nature of this kind of work is as soon as you've written it, it's kind of out of date. It's a fast developing thing. So we're looking for maybe general things to do with electronic semiotic landscape. So linguistic and semiotic landscapes, they're established fields, but they've been broadened to electronic communications. And as we'll see, a lot of that is kind of almost like discourse because it updates in real time. So we'll have a digression to a study of signs and where pragmatics fits into that. And then, having talked about pragmatics, can relevance theory account for some of this? Granted that the coded part is not really, considered the main idea there. So which parts are coded, but which parts might be kind of inferred meaning, etc. So the premise, well, there's different types of COVID. There were, obviously out of date, but intended to be read by people, and others are coded for machines. So if it's a machine, say it's the arbiter, it's like a code, yes or no, you can get in. But other ones are read, on the fly by people, and they can be updated. So we're going to look at how relevance theory might explain some of the features of the code and behaviors of people. So there's some previous studies about signs used in public. So language, but also symbols displayed and used. And the linguistic and semiotic landscape has become more multimodal and mediatized. So obviously it's omnipresent now, and many different things, not just spoken or signed language, but other things, colors, pictures. Which brings us as well to QR codes, because a QR code, you see them everywhere. You can't really read them yourself, but you're satisfied that a machine can read them. So you're prepared to grant them some sort of meaning, some sort of symbolic meaning with this intermediary of the smartphone. And then again, that can guide your resultant behavior. So basically back to de Saussure and some of this signs, signal and signification, the relation there. Words themselves encode concepts or objects in the world. And then broken down into a likeness, so an icon, something you might be able to get straight away, obviously like a picture of a printer on your computer or something. So there's some resemblance. The index has some sort of association, so it triggers some idea. You might see smoke and think of fire or something like that. And a symbol, perhaps to do with things like language, but there's a conventional link that enough people agree between the word, the signifier, and the thing signified. So what kind of things do we see on the certificates and elsewhere? So the neat division has come into question. So Scollin and Scollin have done a lot of work on linguistic landscape, going out into the field, photographing what they see, like in squares and streets. Regard them all really as indexes. So it's the situation in the world. And people are walking around, reading them, and that potentially governs or influences your action So it's not just reading like for interest or whatever. You are actually changing what you might have done based on what you see. So this broader view understands that signs achieve their meaning, not just what they represent, but indexality to something, and then you get your meaning from that and then go forward. So you can see a parallel here to discourse. If somebody is talking to you, you might then change, your knowledge of the world and what you're going to do next. Okay, well, why pragmatics? Well, semiotic signs and relations. Okay, so we talked about signs briefly. And if we talk about relations, well, broken down into now syntactics, maybe an older form syntax, between signs themselves. So think of words moving around, and the relation between them, pure syntax. Perhaps not so much to do with the meaning, it's the signs themselves. Denotations, what things denote. So a word like chair or something like that denotes and can be used to refer to this object that you sit on. But maybe of more interest today, pragmatics, so interpreters and their users. So the object, what is signified, is distinguished by understanding the object, and the sign needs to be interpreted. So not just that it always has this meaning, maybe a dictionary meaning or something, which is all very well, but in context, interpreted. People might have different interpretations. In some situations, most people would agree on the interpretation, but it does have this kind of more context-based kind of wriggle room. So another quote here from Morris, one of the earlier sort of theorists. Pragmatics, the relation of signs to interpreters. So signs have their interpreters, living organisms, people, for words and things like that. Obviously, animals may get information from other signs. But the characteristic of pragmatics is the psychological, biological, sociological phenomena which occur. So when we think of relevance theory and that psychological aspect, sociological, how people behave together, how people are exchanging information through conversation, but through other things as well, can occur in the functioning of signs. So we've talked signs, pragmatics, and relevance theory kind of contribute, or can this contribute to relevance theory? So the two well-known principles there, human cognition geared towards maximization of relevance. So cognitive, what people think, see, look around, and then communication. A person, well, as you know, a person communicating something, and when you listen, you have this presumption of the optimal relevance, unless somebody's trying to mislead you or confuse you or whatever, but just trying to get the message across. And usually, or originally, people talking to each other, but can other things, can systems or a health system give you some sort of information that you're then going to interpret and guide your behavior? So cognitive effects learn as much as possible by the least processing effort if something is relevant. So the Clark textbook has got a great list of papers that I didn't include. You can, in the final chapter there, all the things that relevance theory has been extended to. It's advertising, media, film, newspapers, computer communications. They're kind of getting around just two people talking, and other things, fixed advertisement. How about the semiotic landscape we talked about? What is being communicated and understood? So linguistic and semiotic landscape. Linguistic landscape, the words themselves. If you go into a city street and you'll see loads of signs, advertisements certainly, but shop fronts, restaurant menus, can reflect all sorts of things, languages of the people that live or work there. And something is being communicated, and you can get a lot of information from that. But Callan 2020 has emphasized including pictures, not just language, because if you think about the the symbol, a word, but also a picture or an index, depending, or an icon. All of that could be included in what you can get from looking or listening. So that would be fixed walking down a street, seeing things on the wall or in windows and things. But why not digital forms? Because people walk around with mobile phones all the time. And if you think of a picture on the wall or a big poster, that's going to stay there for a few weeks. Stability, but transience, your virtual one could be updating constantly. And if something's updating constantly, that's almost on the way to like a person constantly coming out with new things. So the whole thing of stability and transience, you have a snapshot. I captured it at that moment, but it's changing in real time. So virtual linguistic landscape could be looked at as there's a quote, unfolding universe of new interactive possibilities, a linguistic ecology, not necessarily representative of the physical world. So it's getting into language and maybe ideas, concepts, etc. Callan, in a later work on linguistic landscape, talks about discourse. So what is the sign doing? So speech acts, perlocutionary, what's given in the sign wants you or you end up doing something as a result. So, somebody tells you to pick up a book or something. By saying that, you might pick up the book, but then the sign itself might tell you to do something. Blakemore has included discourse and relevance theory beyond the sentence, obviously, into context, into conversations, things unfolding in time. So that is kind of introductory. Let's move to the certificates themselves. So they are dynamic. They're constantly changing, updating as the health status changed. They sit on your phone app, you're walking around, and they're updated. They're co-located with the possessor. They're not in a fixed physical space. They're not on a wall somewhere. As you walk around, it goes with you. And there's a boundary, public and private space. So you're walking around with that. But when you want to go into a building or something, you need to show it, and it then becomes public. So we'll have a few pictures. Now, the pictures basically some of them have QR codes. They were generated with fake information, basically, just to show the principle. But you'll see the different types. Some of them have got things that a person might be expected to understand. Some of them include QR codes. So 3 broad types: itinerary code, a person to read. The health code has a QR code and a user read section. And the place code is only for scanning. So here are some itinerary codes. So they're only read by people used at various public transport places. As you can see now, even without knowing or having been introduced, you'll see some sort of conventional things: arrows, to go, heart, perhaps to do with health, shield, protecting, people, those kind of symbols there, and colors that can change as one's health. If you get it clear, it can change color. So there's no QR codes there. The person can read that. There is another one that shows healthy green arrow, showing that you haven't traveled to a high-risk area. The name of the place is included there. And Scotland have claimed that the arrow is one of the most common indexes in the public domain. So kind of conventional. When you say coded, I mean, it's understood. It's certainly something that a lot of people would understand in a lot of different situations. Now, these are health codes. I just put that bar across there. It just can't be read, but again, it's fake information there. But as we'll see, QR and user read information. So the QR code, these are from Shandong, Provincial Certificate, and the State Council. So the one on the left is a healthy green code. There's a date and time, different colors, and you can see a syringe icon on the top left, and showing that the vaccination is completed. And the one on the right, again, is a healthy code certificate. by the State Council. So if you think of QR codes, a previous thing was barcodes, which you still see, there's a quote from Goethe. So QR codes, small black and white squares, look like a Mondrian painting. They become everywhere, advertisements, information. So you say, okay, you know it's got rich in information, but you can't read them yourself, only using a smartphone. Can you understand what's behind the symbol? So the difference between something there, you might guess, like a syringe, and then something which is just information coded. So to fit them into symbols or icons, they don't resemble anything. There's no particular association and no conventional civilization. You can't really learn them over time. They have to be read by a device. But that seems to be fine. People are comfortable with that. They're confident the machine can be built to read them. And when you show it to a competent authority, you've placed the sign, you've given that information, giving it meaning in that context. And that influences what happens next, admittance or denial of entry. Both participants are happy that this has some sort of meaning, can be trusted, understand the symbolic meaning, but it's mediated by a device. This is a place code for generating health certificate. And it's in a public place. You can see there it's screwed on a railing. So it's got a mix of QR code and some symbol in the middle, Temple of Heaven, showing the locality of the code. So there is a bit of information there that a person could say that's from Beijing, for example. Okay, so some certificates have cultural meaning, widely used, but they have diverse semantic meaning. So here are some from Canton with the lion dance. So the lion, nothing happened. Wu shi is synonymous with the lion dance. So somebody who speaks Cantonese would know that the double use of that word can be understood, showing that everyone will be safe and healthy under that, receiving the first dose of vaccine and then changed to the second one. So if you didn't know about that, it mightn't necessarily have the same meaning as somebody in Canton. The bombax flower in Guangzhou, also called a kapok, it has a strong role in Cantonese culture and is the city flower of Guangzhou. So again, the colors indicate the doses of vaccination. The golden is the first vaccination, and the red one is the full course. There's some from Henan. And some of these have landmarks that show markers of identity, so you can associate the codes with a particular territory. Local landmarks, the Archie Memorial Tower, the Shaolin Golden Bell. The Golden Bell is a Chinese martial arts skill believed to build an iron body, so connotations of protecting the body. And again, a diamond outline when the course is completed. The Chongqing code, these have skins as background images. And so as you use them, you can unlock new skins such as hotpot and landmarks in the city. So again, if you're from that city, this might have particular meanings for you. You might have other things like the shield. The Jiang code has got various local fruits. Macau and Hong Kong have multilingual codes. So you've got the color scheme, you've got the Chinese codes, you've got Portuguese and English, and again, QR, and Hong Kong Chinese, traditional Chinese characters and English descriptions. So even though the central bit of the health code is in the different regions is similar, different symbols attached to it can show local characteristics, and some of the additional skins imply safety or protection in Chinese culture. So in discussion, we can look at different types of features found on them. Icons, syringes, animals, fruit, flowers, indexes, maybe more broadly, arrows, linguistic elements, colors, red, orange, yellow, other symbols, and then the QR codes. So permanence is not a feature. These codes are dynamic. The context is important. You present the code, immediate tangible effects, and the social interaction, a member of the public and somebody who could deny you to a place. So having looked at that, a quick run around of different types of code, and of course there's loads more. Let's look at sort of functioning of the science, understanding and sociological phenomena. So relevance theory, extending from words to other signs beyond verbal communication, looking at context. So some of the key ideas here: premises, conclusions, explicature, implicatures, how to proceed. So the codes are generated by a system, but designed to be interpreted quickly and clearly. The designers want you to get the message as quickly as possible. And of course, you know, the machine being the ultimate decider, but you know, it's good if people understand straight away. Implicature has been used in film study, so assumptions intended by the filmmaker, not conventionally communicated. So there's a citation there. So the possessor of the code reads the information, and the icons, indexes, symbols have potentially different processing effort, and the QR codes can't be processed. So you might say then that the explicature, you're getting the proposition, the health status, permitted movement, using conventional information. Some of it almost on the way to being coded, but there are other things, cultural factors, that'll help you arrive at that. And the implicature that follows, behavior intended by the designers, and weaker implicatures, staying in, where you can go, who you can meet, etc. Okay, and the premise, you know that code is intended to have some meaning, and the conclusion, once you see the code, the expected required behavior that follows. So briefly, index identification, social practice. So the indexes: color, hearts, love and health; the arrow, movement, direction; some cultural ones, like the Cantonese ones. Identification, you're incorporating your health information into the system. The system's output controls what you do, you know, to kind of movement. The specifics might be opaque. It's mediated by the machine, but it's accepted by both parties, as we see. And there's a quote by Strassheim. Socially stabilized, individually sentimental types guide the experience along established patterns. So you're open to new, unexpected things, but you're ready to deviate from that and change the patterns as the codes change or context changes. Pragmatic social functions. They should be considered elements of discourse because the coded information, with colors, etc., pragmatically understood, filling in the appropriate response to what you've heard, what you know, the situation, etc., government guidelines. And social practice, the code indexes function. So how is it arrived back? User reading, machine reading, you get to it either way. With relevance theory, so you're reading the conventionally culturally informed meaning, inferring expected adjustments to your behavior, and just kind of pointing to some places maybe relevance theory could go, extend to understanding forms of the semiotic landscape beyond words to other forms of discourse. You can imagine with AI, talking machines, etc. Understanding the codes and communicating from system to a person and vice versa. So in conclusion, the increased ubiquity, pragmatic theories should include responses to these as forms of discourse. So you've got online health systems, broaden pragmatic studies, including signs, words, other types of index. And from the relevance theory perspective, it may involve conventionally informed explicature and implicatures of various strengths. The same processes as you know, involved in working these out. Maximizing benefits as you're walking around with the least processing effort. So that is a brief look at semiotic landscape using relevance theory. And that's it. Here are the
So we might open for questions. We've got 5 minutes for questions on my reading of where we are in terms of time. So if anybody
Okay.
has questions for Conor.
Hi.
Rio, Teru, or
Rio- Yeah, Ryoko and Teru. Yeah.
Thank you. It was interesting. It probably is more of a comment than questions.
Yeah.
These like certificate as multimodal entity with different semiotic input. The idea is very interesting. Have you read? There has been few work on studies on multimodal text, especially visual text. And I think one of the main one is Forceville, Charles Forceville has
Yes, I
a
yeah.
volume on that. And there are some works on emoji by Francisco Yus and myself, and Kate Scott has written on meme and other internet languages. So all of these will probably be very useful. Other thing
Yes.
I thought was, QR code is very funny thing. As you said,
Yeah,
we
but-
have
yeah,
no idea what it represents, right? We know
Yeah.
there's a linguistic or else information behind it, but
Yeah.
to human eyes, it's nothing. But we almost blindly put our camera onto it.
Yeah, it
So
is.
there's some sort of QR code. The QR code seemed to sort of lower our epistemic vigilance in a very strange way. So what I thought listening to your talk was it'd be interesting to examine our epistemic stance against QR codes and other codes that would lead us to somewhere. And I'm not really sure if that's been discussed. But yeah, that
Yeah.
was interesting.
Thank you. No, that very much so, because people are, as you say, using them, going around without being able to. There's some sort of mediator in between, and then the two people using it can communicate, but with this kind of opaque. So that would be a very interesting avenue of research to try and that in how you can use something without really understanding it on the surface. It's investing it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Teru
Hi.
Okanishi.
Yeah, so I'll try to be brief. So I had the unfortunate experience of having to travel during COVID. So I actually, my visa expired and I had to move between UK and Japan. But so I did get this COVID certificate in both countries. So in UK and Japan, both I got vaccinated in both countries as well. But both were quite, they both used some sort of QR code, but they were quite bland. They didn't really incorporate any of the design codes, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was wondering whether, if there is any reason, these Chinese apps included so much design, and illustrative code aspects to it, where it's not really seemingly that relevant to the cause, right? Because what the authorities definitely want to know is whether you're vaccinated or not, or whether you've been to, an infected area or not. So are there any comments on that?
I think part of that was maybe for buy-in, that people were almost collecting skins and these cultural things on them, and kind of like the look of them after a thing with different images and things. So I think part of it was maybe to make it more visual, user friendly, and maybe, yeah, I mean, the QR code does, of course, as we said, is the ultimate arbiter, but also that you can have some sort of understanding of maybe place, because if you're collecting the skins, different places, and also maybe a clearer thing about the color, green, orange, and all that kind of thing. So it's like a belt and braces, the machine, the more sort of stable thing, or more coded thing, and then the other thing, which is more just how you feel you should respond, or how you're moving, how you're getting on, where you're going, and that. I mean, that was part of the thing about the skins that people were collecting or getting them because of places they went and things like that. Yeah, so probably buy-in. Yeah, very.
Perfect.
Thanks for that contribution. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the back of that, because I think it is really interesting that they've included these images. I spend a lot of my career adding images to support people with disabilities to understand information, right? So
Yeah.
it was kind of surprising to me that some of the images that they added didn't seem to assist people in necessarily understanding, but had these implicit meanings that I think you're right are about buy-in, like the one that you alluded to about the iron, the
Yeah,
string one.
the
You
iron
know,
bell, yeah.
this
Yeah.
seems to be about sort of pushing a buy-in rather than about a core sort of message. So yeah,
Yeah.
really interesting. Thank you, Conor.
Yeah. Thank you.